The post-Endgame era of the MCU didn't live up to the expectations in terms of reviews, audience acceptance, and box office results. There were exceptions, like No Way Home, Loki, and possibly Deadpool and Wolverine, but in general, we can say that Marvel's plan for phases 4 and 5 did not work. This wasn't by accident, and superhero fatigue had nothing to do with it.
Liar.
Today in Mr. Headcannon, I'm going to tell you the 4 reasons why Marvel fell after Endgame. Seeing the success of Infinity War and Endgame, Marvel believed they had won the audience over. They thought people would continue watching their projects even if their quality was questionable or if those projects featured 4th-tier characters. That's the only explanation for greenlighting an Echo show, or an Ironheart show, or an Agatha show, or a Wonder Man series, or a White Vision series. No one was interested in watching Echo on Disney+. And I'm sure the same can be said about all the other projects. Maybe they end up being good, but they don't generate any excitement whatsoever.
I'm not gonna watch it.
In MCU, the reign of Marvel Studios, Joanna Robinson explained that Marvel executives were convinced that Quantumania would be a success, and they were surprised when it flopped at the box office and audiences didn't like it. I don't think Quantumania is the worst superhero movie ever, as some say, and it could have grossed more than $470 million, but there was no way it would be an absolute hit, with people leaving the cinema saying, "This is the best superhero movie I've ever seen." If Marvel executives thought that would happen, it's because they underestimated the audience. They thought we would swallow anything after the Infinity Saga, and that's not the case. If anything, superhero movie fans became more demanding after Endgame.
All I'm asking for is total perfection.
One of the main differences between the MCU and the DCU was organization. Marvel Studios always had a figure in charge, one producer crafting one story through all the projects and deciding which project was greenlit and which wasn't. They took their time, introducing several characters separately before bringing them together in big events. But after Endgame, that changed. By doubling the number of projects, it was impossible for one person to oversee all of them. And what's worse, the MCU's narrative fell apart.
What does that mean?
Shortly after Doctor Strange 2 premiered, Elizabeth Olsen said that she would have liked WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness to connect better, but that was impossible because Doctor Strange started filming while WandaVision was still in production. Sam Raimi and Michael Waldron had no way of respecting what happened in WandaVision because they didn't even know how that series would end, and it gets worse. Jack Schaefer, WandaVision's screenwriter, admitted he didn't even know what would happen in the last episode. They decided the ending while filming because Marvel didn't follow the classic procedure for making series. There were no showrunners, no Bibles with key concepts, and they didn't even review the scripts before starting to film. Moon Knight's writer left halfway through the series. They had to throw away everything they'd filmed for Daredevil Born Again because they realized halfway through filming that the series wasn't good enough.
This is heavy.
I'm surprised Moon Knight and Loki turned out well because this level of disorganization reminds me a lot of what happened with the old DCU, and we know how that ended. Yeah, I know the world has returned to normal, but phases 4 and 5 were affected by the apocalypse. There were schedule changes, like releasing No Way Home before Doctor Strange 2, something that affected the story of both films.
Prove it.
Did you find it convenient that Ned learned magic out of nowhere? The original plan was for America Chavez to summon Andrew and Toby's Spider-Man, but after swapping release dates, that couldn't happen, because America would show up first in Doctor Strange 2. I'm sure that if Doctor Strange had come out before No Way Home, the reception of Multiverse of Madness would have been much better. We wouldn't have seen the Spider-Verse on live action yet, so expectations wouldn't be so high, and Doctor Strange might have passed 1 billion. And there's much more. All movies filmed during the pandemic had to follow protocols due to the virus, so budgets skyrocketed. An average movie like Quantumania ended up costing $200 million. To top it off, actors couldn't travel freely between countries due to restrictions, which affected filming. Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifans couldn't even be on the No Way Home set, so Marvel had to use recycled scenes from previous movies. The Illuminati and Doctor Strange didn't see eye to eye at any moment because all the actors filmed their scenes at different times, so their appearances were brief. There were plans to include Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Multiverse of Madness, but they couldn't because of the restrictions. I'm sure you didn't like this and this and this. This decline in Marvel's visual effects was a product of the pandemic. Too many scenes were filmed with green screens because they couldn't go out or actors couldn't travel to the set. And when restrictions lifted, Hollywood studios had too many projects needing post-production. Everyone wanted their movies and series finished on time to release everything at once, but there aren't enough visual effects artists to handle such a load, so several projects were left half-finished. I don't want to freak you out, but this isn't over. The same thing is happening right now after the strikes. Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be the first MCU project since 2021 that wasn't affected by the pandemic, but the movie had to go through the actors and writers strike. The trailers look good, but we'll have to wait until the movie releases on theaters to see if the effects are well done or if they look like this.
Disgusting.
And we have the 4th reason, something often underestimated but very important. It seems like a cheap excuse, but Joanna Robinson revealed an interview with Chadwick Boseman that clarifies everything. Chadwick told me the story about how, on the set of Endgame, he and Brie Larson and Tom Holland sat around and talked about how they were the future of Marvel and how exciting that was for them.
What does that mean?
This means that since before 2018, when Endgame started filming, Marvel already planned to replace Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America with Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. That was going to be the new MCU Trinity. The new saga post-Endgame was going to have clear protagonists, and it made sense for them to be the chosen ones. Spider-Man is the most popular superhero in the world. Black Panther became an icon, mainly in the United States, and his movie surpassed 1 billion, and Captain Marvel is one of the most important female characters in Marvel Comics, and her solo movie also surpassed 1 billion.
Money, 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 money.
We have to consider this was years before the Marvels flopped, and Kevin Feige and his fellas don't have a time machine, as far as we know. Marvel's plan was clear. Use these three characters as the face of the MCU in Phase 4, form a new group of Avengers, and wait until Phase 5 or 6 to introduce the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. I bet the monetization of this video that in 2018, they didn't even plan to adapt Secret Wars. They weren't going to make a soft reboot to bring back Iron Man and Captain America, because they wouldn't need them. They already had their replacements. The plan was good, but things happened along the way. In 2019, Marvel and Sony had problems with their agreement to use Spider-Man. Seeing that the new Spider-Man movies were a huge box office success, Sony wanted to bring the character to their universe, pulling him out of the MCU and separating him from the Avengers. Peter Parker's last appearance in the MCU was going to be Far From Home, but both studios reached a last-minute agreement, and these negotiations became an anecdote. But it wasn't so simple. After this happened, Marvel Studios realized Spider-Man couldn't be the face of their universe, because they would always depend on Sony, the studio that owns the character's rights.
He's mine.
And this was only the beginning. After Endgame premiered, Marvel also realized fans didn't accept Carol Danvers. They didn't want to see her anywhere, let alone as Thor's replacement. And in August 2020, Chadwick Boseman passed away, and it was too soon to recast T'Challa. The plan for the new Trinity went down the drain, and not due to poor planning or incompetence. They had bad luck, and I know what you're gonna say, that they had enough time to make a change. Seeing the success of Loki, why didn't they make him one of the new saga's protagonists? People would have loved it. It's more complicated than that. Before the series aired on Disney Plus, a lot of people weren't keen on this version of Loki. I remember reading comments from fans saying that it didn't make sense to watch the series because the real Loki had died, and this was going to be pure filler or a bad retcon.
Forget it. I don't want to see him. I don't want him.
Those comments disappeared after the first episode, but Marvel knew from the start that no everyone would be convinced, so they couldn't risk giving Loki such an important role. And once the first season ended and everyone screamed from the rooftops that they loved the character, it was too late. The series finished airing in mid-2021 when Marvel was already producing other projects. They didn't have time to include him in Doctor Strange 2, not even in Love and Thunder, because both movies had already been filmed by then. But what about Deadpool? There's a chance Deadpool and Wolverine may save Marvel. I tell you all about it in this video.